The process of making and releasing a studio movie is hugely complicated, with the end product typically having passed through the hands of innumerable executives, producers, and so on, before it's finally sent out into the world. But perhaps the single most agonizing part of the marathon that is making a movie? Dealing with test audiences. Oh boy. Test audiences are relied upon by studios to gauge how well a film will perform with Joe Public, and in turn allow said studio to predict how well the movie will do at the box office. Now, test screenings certainly aren't universally loathed by filmmakers, because they can actually provide genuine constructive feedback about what is and is not working, but they also often result in films having their most challenging content whittled away before release. There are countless stories of dreadful movies being put through the test screening mangle, but what about those genuinely great films which nevertheless bombed when they were first shown to the general public? That's ultimately what happened with this lot, baby. Each of them unassailable classics of their respective genres. And yet, every single one of them got torn apart when they were first screened, for better or worse. So I'm Gareth, this is Whatculture, and here are great movies that had awful test screenings. Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy. Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy may be one of the most beloved comedies of the last 20 years, but its journey to the big screen was fraught to say the least. Its first test screening was nothing short of disastrous, with Will Ferrell recently confirming that Anchorman initially scored a terrible 50 out of 100, with many audience members disliking the original finale, in which Veronica Corningstone is abducted by a vigilante group. Ferrell said that this subplot lost the audience, and so the studio subsequently allowed director Adam McKay to shoot a new finale, which revolved around a panda giving birth at San Diego Zoo. This new plot was filmed in just 5 days, and basically ended up saving the movie from commercial oblivion, as Anchorman went on to gross over $90 million worldwide. However, the original subplot was ultimately included in the counterpart film Wake Up Ron Burgundy: The Lost Movie, which was released on DVD the very same year, and was comprised of both deleted scenes and outtakes from the original shoot. So if you haven't checked that out already, go and treat yourself.
Being a movie addict can throw up all sorts of pitfalls your way. Diminishing shelf space, a watch list that never seems to end no matter how many movies you end up watching, and the dreaded scenario of wanting to watch a movie only to find out it's locked to a streaming service in some faraway place, like Canada, I don't know. But thankfully, Ed Norton himself has stepped...
It's not actually Ed Norton.
Luckily, Norton VPN has stepped in to lend us a hand with a really cool offer to fix this exact problem. Scan the QR code on screen or use the link in the description, and you can get 54% off your first year's subscription, working out as little as $4.17 per month, or £2.50 a month if you're in the old UK of GB. Again, that's less than $5 a month to watch the stuff you love and look after your privacy while you do it. And if you decide you don't want to keep going, Norton also has a 60-day money-back guarantee, which is pretty cool. Thanks to Norton for sponsoring us once again. I, for one, loved you in Moonrise Kingdom.
Annihilation. Alex Garland's mesmerizing sci-fi masterpiece Annihilation may have been widely embraced by critics, but it ultimately flopped at the box office, an outcome Paramount absolutely knew was coming following poor test screenings. These screenings indicated to producer and financier David Ellison that the film was ultimately too intellectual and too complicated, apparently, prompting him to request that Garland make changes to it before release, such as altering the ending and reworking the portrayal of Natalie Portman's protagonist, Lena. But thankfully, Garland had an ace up his sleeve, co-producer Scott Rudin, who had final cut privilege on the film and went to bat for Garland, refusing to take notes from Ellison at all. The behind-the-scenes squabbling did nevertheless prompt Paramount to sell the film's international rights to Netflix, ensuring that in order to mitigate a bomb in the making, it was only theatrically released in the United States, Canada, and China. So while most of the world sadly didn't get to watch Annihilation on the big screen as God intended, they did get to see Garland's untarnished cut. That's surely a worthwhile trade-off long-term. As for Garland, whose prior film, Ex Machina, also tested poorly, though proved a modest commercial success and won an Oscar, he said that he couldn't give a fudge about the test screening process, only he didn't say fudge. Sunset Boulevard. Though largely accepted to be one of the greatest films ever made today, Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard test screened horribly. It didn't help that the film originally opened with a more fantastical opening sequence set in a morgue, in which murder victim Joe Gillis details the particulars of his death to his fellow corpses. This sequence was met with laughter rather than intrigue from the audience, and left viewers unsure of whether the film was meant to be a comedy or drama. Following the dumpster fire of a screening, it got even worse, as one attendee reportedly told Wilder that they never saw such a pile of S-word in all their life. Again, they didn't say S-word. 2 additional test screenings elicited the same bemused response from audiences, and so Wilder went back and switched out the morgue opening for the ultimately iconic poolside one instead. And like that, a masterpiece was born. Cheers for checking out this great list about awful test screenings, my friend. And if you're having a good time, then hit that subscribe button down below and you will have more good times because you will have more Whatculture videos on your screen. Now back to the video. John Wick. 4 movies later, it is tough to consider that early responses to the original John Wick were not good at all, even accepting that Keanu Reeves' career was in quite the slump at the time. But as recently revealed by franchise director Chad Stahelski, a friends and family screening of the film received a lukewarm response. And given that friends and family screenings are the most generous audience a movie is ever gonna get, that's typically a clear sign that a movie's goose is cooked. A concern Stahelski ultimately had a come-to-God moment, however, where he vowed to stay the course and not make excessive changes to the movie. As he put it, "We're not changing this, we're gonna own it. We're gonna do our headshots, we're gonna do our wacky choreography, we're gonna do what we wanted and what we saw. We're not gonna get nervous." That's a brave man right there. And it was clearly the right call. On opening night, Stahelski, Reeves and co-director David Leitch sneaked into a midnight screening of John Wick and saw the crowd going wild for it, ensuring any remaining fears just melted away. 12 Monkeys. There are few filmmakers more acutely aware of how painful the test screening process can be than Terry Gilliam, who famously battled with Universal over the final cut of his 1985 sci-fi film Brazil. A decade later, Gilliam again found himself unmoored by the whims of test audiences when they saw his sci-fi thriller 12 Monkeys. Though during the screening, Gilliam actually thought that the audience liked the film, he was in for quite the shock when the feedback cards were returned. One attendee called the film one of the worst movies I've seen. Herky, jerky, erratic, badly photographed, while another deemed it just stupid. And most harshly, one suggested shoot the writers. Ouch, man. Unlike Brazil, these reactions had little impact on the movie, which received only minor tweaks before release, where it eventually received rave reviews, scored 2 Oscar nominations, and turned a hefty profit at the box office. Basically, the best possible outcome then. Yeah, Last Action Hero. Time has certainly been kind to Arnold Schwarzenegger's Last Action Hero, even if audiences of the time weren't quite ready for it. Or just as likely, they were too busy gawking at Jurassic Park, which released 1 week earlier. Can't really blame them. Columbia Pictures knew they had a box office turkey on their hands though, following a legendarily terrible test screening which took place less than 6 weeks before the movie was set to open. Director John McTiernan called it the roughest form he's ever seen a movie test screen in. And according to Schwarzenegger, it was tough to make out most of the dialogue due to the sound mix being so unfinished. As a result, the audience were terminally bored by the end, and the comment cards were brutal enough in their assessment of the film that producer Mark Canton ultimately shredded them before either McTiernan or Schwarzenegger could see them. Details of the test screening soon enough leaked to the press, causing a tidal wave of anti-hype hype to precede the film's release. Furthermore, McTiernan and Schwarzenegger both petitioned the studio to delay the movie so it could be more substantially reworked, but they refused. And with that, Last Action Hero was sent out to die basically, though its esteem among film fans has grown considerably over the last 3 decades. A happy ending, you'll love to see it. Videodrome. Sometimes a film test screens so poorly there's not much more to do than just laugh, throw your hands up and accept that you've made a wildly unwieldy, stridently uncommercial beast. And that is precisely what happened with David Cronenberg's stunning body horror film Videodrome, a test screening of which was, in Cronenberg's own words, the most disastrous screening you can imagine. Recently, feedback cards from this screening were posted online, and they sure hold nothing back, alright. One said, "I fail to understand what would be accomplished by releasing such a movie on the public. What sort of person would enjoy it?" Other viewers called it pretty disgusting, criticised its plotless sex, and most hilariously of all, one simply scrawled "sucked" across their feedback sheet. To the point. Ultimately, little was done to reduce Videodrome's transgressive content in reaction to the test screening. Rather, Cronenberg actually restored about 10 minutes worth of scenes, whose exclusion left portions of the story quote-unquote totally incomprehensible. And another Cronen creation was soon unleashed into the world.